From the Casey State Bank Digital First Studio at WTWO, this is the Goin to the Endzone podcast. Sponsored by Terre Haute Chevrolet, Indiana State University, and Kirshner Building Centers.
Welcome to week 9 of our Going to the Endzone podcast. It is week 9. We are feeling fine. Hard to believe. Last week of the regular season for high school football in Indiana with Omar Tello and Nicole Cristina. I am Grant Pugh. Happy to have you guys back with us this week to talk about week 9 and some high school football. What we have to start, as we guys talked about, on a somber note, just a sad week for the Wabash Valley high school football community.
Grant, yeah, you mentioned a very tough week for Eastern Green, and we send our thoughts and prayers to their whole community there. Jed Cummings, their outstanding young football player, passed away in a car accident on Sunday, and that was really tough news to hear over the weekend. And he was a player with a lot of promise. He scored a long 80-yard touchdown against the Miners, I believe the only touchdown they had, and just somebody that you feel like he was going to really be a great, not only player, but a student athlete for Eastern Green. What a tremendous loss, though.
Yeah, and they will be out there playing for much more than themselves this week, that's for sure. I know learning a lot about that from ISU and the loss that football team went through. You see how close these guys are, and the coaches and the players and the fans, and especially when you've got this young kid, and like you said, had just gotten a touchdown the night before, and it's just a tragic situation, and it really changes the game. And special shout out to Linton, because a lot of people from Linton went down to Eastern Green, or over to Eastern Green, for their little moment of silence that they did out there. So, you know, it's moments like these where it's about more than just the football game and the football team. It's really about the big community. So we'll be thinking about them this Friday for sure.
That for sure. Speaking of Friday, a couple of big games. We start, Omar, you saw Linton last week. They're still undefeated, ranked number 1 in the season. The Miners, a big, impressive win over Eastern Green. Yeah,
they just seem to go up and down the field fairly easily, Grant. Very explosive offense. I've been impressed that since they took over the number 1 ranking, just no complacency seems to set in. Coach Oliver doing a great job there, and they'll look to finish the season out strong and see what they can do, potentially a deep playoff run for them.
Yeah, the Hunter show, right? Hunter Jennings, Hunter Johns, they both of them really shining for the Miners. So really fun team. I think we'll see them long into the playoffs.
Another undefeated team, Nicole. We've touched on Owen Valley several times. Owen Valley Patriots, undefeated on the season, looking to wrap up 9-0. The Patriots have gotten big wins over Northview, big wins against Sullivan. Now they look for another big win Friday at Cloverdale.
Yeah, another team I think we'll see for quite a while longer. I just think that the way that they've been playing together, all the pieces fitting together really nicely. Christian Mcdonald all over the state rankings when you look up top performers, really doing a great job. I think 22 touchdowns this season so far, and he's only one part of the puzzle, but I think we talk a lot about the coaching staff over there and how they've really been able to take that momentum from late last season and turn it into a lot of progress this season as well. So looking for them to survive quite a while still into the fall.
Omar, it's senior night at Terre Haute South, and it's also homecoming. Josh Cottee, 93 yards away from setting the school's all-time leading mark. But the South is more about just running the ball with Josh Cottee. We've seen they've made some big plays with Brady Wilson at quarterback. Their defense has made a play. Your thoughts on South as they look to finish second in the conference, something they have not done in a long time?
Wouldn't that be awesome if he could do that? 93 yards, like you mentioned, get a school record there on their homecoming game. But you mentioned the offense. Brady not only has Josh in the backfield, but some offensive weapons too. They've had Nas McNeil this year. They've had Deshaun Lowe, who I know you talked to recently. Just an outstanding team, and Coach Heron really seems to have them rolling, coming off a nice 42-7 win. So hopefully that'll be interesting. Hopefully he can get it on Friday night.
Another special senior night it's going to be for the Sullivan Golden Arrows, Nicole. Down in Sullivan, they expect they could know. You never know. They could host a playoff game in a couple weeks, but a special senior night for Sullivan against West Vigo.
Yeah, talking again about another team that had just a tremendous loss over the summer. Jeremiah Vernelson, he should be out there at this game, and unfortunately he won't be. I know that'll be a big hole for them, but this team under Mike Caton first season has really held strong. They've had some tough games, but I think that when you look at what they've been able to accomplish and what some of those seniors are doing, and some of the work between Luke and Rowdy Adams, and just some of the stuff that they've been able to keep at their core under Mike Caton. Not a big surprise, as he was with Blaine for so many years, but I think that they are going to finish out strong. I think West Vigo won't be too much of an opponent for them, and I know Caton is hungry for that Linton matchup, hopefully in the championship game. I know he wants that, so just keep pushing ahead, I think, but they have a lot to be proud of this season.
Omar, a big one Friday for us as well. We've got the Linton Miners going to South Putnam. You've seen both schools. You haven't seen maybe South Putnam as recently this season, but what a big matchup. Two teams that are ranked, Linton at South Putnam, and the Miners still on a roll right now.
That should be a really good game, Grant. As you mentioned, South Putnam, I saw them at West Vigo. They had, I believe it was like a 43-8 win. They were just moving up and down the field. Very good team. So I think the Miners going on the road, that'll be a very interesting game there. And we'll see who can kind of pull that one out. Two teams that have been to the playoffs recently, and they, I think, have like deep playoff aspirations too. So should be a good coaching matchup there in Greencastle.
Any other final thoughts on the last week of the regular season here in Indiana? Illinois has one more week. Got to give a shout-out, Marshall Casey. I know the records may not be what we want them to be this year, but it's a rivalry with Marshall and Casey going to meet up on Saturday night.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think, an interesting thing to see. I think big rivalry, and a lot of people will be there. And we haven't been able to talk about Illinois football as much this year. Not as many successful seasons over there, but it's always a great night when you have a big rivalry.
Kind of neat how they do that too on Saturdays too.
Yeah.
It's cool they play on Saturdays with the ref shortage. You're going to see a lot of Saturday games. That's okay with us because we can't get to every game, certainly on Friday nights. Big game happening in Northview. Northview against Indian Creek. We're going to have more on that game a little later in the show. Hey, well, thanks for watching Going to the End Zone podcast. We'll be back with more right after a look at Friday's matchups. Welcome back to our Going to the End Zone podcast with Omar Tello. I am Grant Pugh. We are now joined by a special guest from a remote secret location that we will not disclose. That would be Northview head football coach Mark Rates. Coach Rates, welcome to the show this week.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good. Happy to have you with us. It's Indian Creek week. First off, right away, your thoughts as you guys get set for a big one with Indian Creek on Friday night.
Well, we know it's going to be a tough game. Indian Creek's coming in at 6-2. They've got a really good quarterback. They got a new coach who's got a lot of energy. They brought up a lot of positive energy into their program, and I know they're going to be really, really excited to come play us.
Coach, we were also kind of talking off camera that obviously you guys have that big game, but also down the road. What was kind of the reaction from you guys when you saw the pairings come out and you would get Brebeuf?
Well, we knew that'd be a possibility. And I actually got to become pretty good friends with the coach at Brebeuf this summer because we coached together in the state all-star game. So we had talked a little bit throughout the course of this season because we played some common opponents. Garin Catholic was the main one. But honestly, we saw the drawing, but our focus has been 100% on Indian Creek this week. And then Saturday, after we break down the film from Friday night against Indian Creek, we'll move on to the Brebeuf stuff.
Coach, we were talking. You've been to the station before. Tell us back. You've been here a long time ago. Your dad's certainly a decorated ISU football coach. It's kind of cool to talk football and some old stories. But your dad's no stranger to coming to the station or being on WTWO back in the day.
I was telling you guys earlier when I was probably in junior high, around that age. They used to always practice on Friday. So when my season was done, or if I didn't have practice, my mom would take me to ISU's practice. And then after practice on Fridays, he would go to the station there at Channel 2 and record a live interview with Jason Penske. And then after that, we'd book it back to campus, and he'd have Friday night meetings with his players. So they weren't out doing, the wrong things or whatever. So, that was the last time I'd been to the station, which was, probably 30 years ago. But it was kind of neat to come back, and it brought back some memories for sure.
That's really cool, Coach, that you kind of have that coaching connection sort of runs in the family for you. If there are younger coaches maybe listening to you during this podcast and they're like, hey, how do I get my team to buy in? You've had so much success over the years. What advice would you have, if any, for young coaches of this is what you got to do to sort of lay down your culture of being able to be successful?
Well, the big thing with me is I think you just have to be genuine. You have to coach to your personality. You have to be yourself. you can't try to be someone else or use someone else's style because I think over time it's been proven that, different styles in coaching work. Like, for instance, my dad and I have two very different styles, I think. But, I think players recognize when you're genuine. They recognize when you care. Another thing is that I've always tried to do is just work really hard at it. If I want our players to buy into doing morning workouts, which is what we've always done, I need to be at all those morning workouts. If I want our players to buy into doing stuff throughout the spring or in the winter or whatever, I need to be at all that. So, I would say be there, be present, be genuine, because, various programs, the whatever's the definition of success is sometimes different. When I was at Patriots South, we were playing in the MIC against Carmel and Center Grove and those guys. And, sometimes winning on the field was kind of hard, but, we'd measure success with doing the right thing and trying to develop character and develop people who are going to be positive members in their communities.
How much do you look forward to, I want to say bragging rights, because, looking ahead, certainly not just a sectional, but any time of the season, I feel like the Wabash Valley can sometimes be overlooked when it comes to high school football. A lot of good football happens around here, but when people look around the state, they don't mention the Wabash Valley all the time. When you've got some of these powerhouse teams, how much is it? You certainly always want to have maybe a little chip on your shoulder, but kind of some bragging rights when we have a game like against Indian Creek or South against Columbus North, that sort of thing. Kind of take it into, Wabash Valley bragging rights on the line.
Yeah, I think football around the whole state's gotten a lot better, especially since I've been in high school. When I went away for 10 years and came back, I was pleasantly surprised with how much better the football has gotten out here. But whenever we're playing people from out of our area, I always talk with our teams. We kind of stress, earning respect, and I feel like in the Wabash Valley, people for the most part respect our program. But when you get to Indianapolis or Evansville or wherever else we might play, they don't know a whole lot about Northview. So the only way that you earn any sort of respect statewide is by beating teams from other areas and beating the good teams from other areas. And that's something we always try to shoot to do with our team.
We were talking off camera one time, and you had a cool story about getting a chance to visit the White House for our viewers. Tell us a little about that story when you got to go to the White House and meet the president.
Go Air Force.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about Air Force football, and, I was saying I was a little disappointed they lost last week. So they're 4-2, but they're playing UNLV this week. But yeah, so whoever wins the little round robin between Air Force, Army, and Navy, they win something known as the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy. And what they do is they take all the seniors from that football team, whoever wins the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy, and we were fortunate to do that when I was a senior. We all get to go meet the President of the United States in May. So when we went, it just so happened the Yankees had won the World Series the year before, and they were in Baltimore playing the Orioles. And so we had to actually wait outside the White House until the Yankees were done meeting the president. So whenever they left, they came pulling out in their bus. We could see inside, and you could see, Derek Jeter. And the guy that I remembered seeing the most was probably a name most people forget, but Scott Brocious was sitting right up in the front. And I remember seeing him. As soon as they left, we got to go in and we met George Bush, the younger one. It was his first year, I believe, in office when we went to do that. So it was a really neat experience.
That's really cool. That's really cool, Coach. Awesome that you got to do that.
How's your coaching staff handling the loss this week? You're without a specific coach who thinks he can wine and dine overseas. How are you guys kind of handling the loss of Coach Hannes this week?
Well, it's been hard, but not really. But he doesn't he didn't play football in high school. He doesn't exactly know the X's and O's a whole lot, but he does some things, that a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate or recognize. And that's like setting up the Endzone camera or going to Sam's Club to get meals for us or running individual for our younger players or running the scout cards on offense. So he does some different things for us. So we've missed him with that. But, somehow we've made do this week, but we'll be excited to see him when he gets back.
Coach, I know you, like many other guys in the country, your staff, you wouldn't be where you are without your staff. Certainly your family, your wives too, but a shout out certainly to the coaches, the assistant coaches, the wives. I know everyone, like you said, some people work 9 to 5 jobs and then football's kind of secondary after school, but a lot of blood, sweat, and tears go into a high school football season.
Yeah, for sure. On our staff, there's only 2 of us that are teachers. So the rest of our staff, I think we have 10. So the other 8 guys have other jobs. And, football's not paying for a whole lot. It's not their full-time job. They've got other responsibilities. So, I'm always appreciative of the amount of time that they spend working with our players and making sure that we're prepared and we're helping our kids be as prepared as possible to go win games. And, I know it's a lot of time and it's not for a whole lot of money. And, we go 7 days a week in season. And, it sometimes is a thankless job, but, people they don't really get into high school football for the money. It's more for, the love of the game and trying to help young people be successful.
Kind of piggyback on that, Coach. Last thing I had for you was what do you enjoy most about coaching over there?
I really like the community, obviously. When I was decided to live in this area, I was like, one of the best football jobs in this whole area is Northview. And, when I had the opportunity to come over here, I jumped on it and I've got no regrets. It's a place my family loves. I've had a really good experience there, not just with football, but with the whole athletic department and really the whole school. Everybody's very supportive of each other. It's kind of got that, you got the big school opportunity, but at the same time, you have the small town feel. And the community really supports the school and the athletes and our football team. And it's really a nice place to be.
All right, Coach, it's your turn. We've asked a lot of tough questions. Now you get to ask some tough questions, or us maybe, whatever you want to ask. We've asked you a lot of cool questions over the years. There's maybe some good, some bad questions. Now ask us whatever you want to get roll with.
Okay, well, I'll go back to this. I know you're a big Tennessee fan, Grant. I just want to get your take, A, on Tennessee versus Alabama this week, and B, if Tennessee can pull the upset, how will you celebrate that?
Yeah, it's a big game, maybe one of the biggest games of the weekend, Tennessee, Alabama. Bama's it's down to 7 now. We're 7.5. It's a 7-point favorite now. But, man, they haven't beat Alabama in 15 years. 2006, I was at that game. Fun fact of that game, I was with my dad. We ran into Drew Bennett. I don't know if you remember Drew Bennett, played at UCLA, played for the Titans. We met up with him at halftime. But, man, if they could beat Alabama on Saturday, there would be a lot of celebration. I'm not going to be at work next week anyways. I took some time off. But Bama always does the cigar thing. When they beat Tennessee, you'll see guys, those smoke cigars with Coach Saban. I think Coach Gene Stallings started that. But I want to say Tennessee guys would do that too. But they haven't beat Bama in a long time. So if they were to beat Bama over the weekend, that would be a monster celebration. Probably a good thing we wouldn't do a podcast next week, Coach, with me. I might be celebrating that.
It's time is what you're saying, Grant.
It is. It's definitely time. But, Nick Saban's one of those guys. He's not going to be intimidated by Knoxville, 100,000 people. He's not going to be intimidated by, a big crowd or a good quarterback. But it should be one of the best games of the weekend, Coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll ask a question to Omar. I've recently found out that he's a big USC football fan, and he's a big Yankees fan. So, of course, I asked him if he was a Duke basketball fan and a Dallas Cowboys fan, which he denied. But USC playing Utah this week. Omar, what's your take?
Oh man, that's a great question, Coach. And that's before the season even started, and they had all the success. I kind of had that circled as probably our toughest game of the year. Coach Whittingham does such a great job over there. I know you're kind of familiar with them, but as kind of Grant was breaking down Tennessee, Alabama, Utah is favored, so I think that certainly got USC's attention. I think it's going to be a very difficult game. Actually, the last USC home game I went to was against Utah in 2015. They were like 3rd ranked. We were unranked, kind of going through a coaching change, and we were able to upset them at the Coliseum. So it's always going to be a tough game in the Pac-12. You kind of figure the road to the Pac-12 championship kind of goes through this game now with UCLA having beaten Utah last week. So this game is going to set up very big, and I think turnovers are going to definitely be a key, but hoping the Trojans can go in there to Salt Lake City. Tough place to play, kind of a night game, and we'll see if they can come out with the win, but it's not going to be easy for sure.
Yeah, it's nice to talk some college football. on the show as well. Any other things, Coach, you want to ask? Thanks again for taking some time, and floor is yours.
No other questions. I appreciate everything you guys do covering, high school sports in this area, and you always do a very, very nice job covering Northview, and I always feel like you guys have a positive spin on how you handle things, and it's very much appreciated over here on my end.
Thanks,
Coach. I just want to say thanks so much. You were the first person that we've done a Zoom interview with the podcast, so it's kind of history there. But thanks for the extra time you've kind of spent with us this week. We certainly appreciate it. Tell the family thanks so much for the time.
Thanks so much. Head coach Mark Rates, who just won his 75th game as head coach of the Northview Knights. Last weekend, 90th overall as head football coach. Hey, thanks for taking some time. We are back with more Going to the End Zone podcast right after a look at this week's matchups. Welcome back to our Going to the End Zone podcast. If you've seen our show, you know what time it is. We talk college football in the final block. A big weekend of college football coming up. And we're going to start with, how about the Sycamores? Hanging with the number one team in the country last weekend. Now they have a big one, guys, on the road at Youngstown State fighting the Penguins.
Yeah, I think that there's so many good takeaways from the North Dakota State game. Obviously, getting a win would have been the icing on the cake, but they have so many things to be proud of. I think Cade Chambers, in his first college start at quarterback, really proved that he should be in that spot. He should be vying for that spot. I know Gavin Screws still kind of battling back from an injury, but I think the competition just got even more, strong there for that spot. I think he found Dante quite a bit. They had a good rhythm together, and I think that that's going to be something that they're looking for in a quarterback. Their QB1 is going to have to connect to Dante a lot. You saw a lot in their receiving core in general with Dakota Caton stepping up and making some good plays. And I think also Justin Dinka, again, stepping into a spot with T. Hodge being he's still trying to bounce back from an injury as well. And, of course, Omarion Dixon, who was very likely going to be out there making a lot of plays, not able to join this season. So I think that you're seeing a lot of people step up. And speaking of stepping up, Rylan Cole getting 19 tackles and 2 weeks in a row playing in a little
with a club on his arm,
Thank
right?
you. I almost called it a boot.
Smash.
Yeah,
Yes.
The club. And he's just incredible. And you just see a lot of these guys stepping up and doing what they need to do. And you can see they're playing with a lot of heart. And I think that's going to continue throughout the rest of the season.
To your point, Nicole, how about 156 yards, I believe he had? And you got to give some of that credit to the offensive line, opening some holes for him. Also, like you mentioned, Rylan Cole, he's doing this with a club on. Like, imagine if he's 100% full strength, what he would be doing. But yeah, tremendous shout out to him two times in a row now, or not in a row, but 2 times this season, Defensive Player of the Week. So some good things to take away from that game you mentioned, and we'll see hopefully if they can keep this momentum going. Tough game at Youngstown State on Saturday.
Yeah, the season is not going to get any easier for them. North Dakota State, just one of many matchups that they'll have.
Tough schedule continues for ISU. We want to talk about, maybe not as so much about Bellarmine, Omar, but St. Mary of the Woods. They're undefeated. They had the bye, back at home this weekend. Back on the road this weekend, right? With a big game for the Pomeroys matching up in sprint football, actually.
Yeah, Bellarmine, I believe, in Louisville. And Coach Powell, you kind of like what they're doing so far, undefeated on the season. They had the bye week in case they had any injuries to kind of get healthy. But encourage people to kind of get out there. If you haven't seen them play, they'll return home after this week on the road. And they're just a fun team to watch. I believe they scored 48 points in their last win. So they're entertaining brand of football. And we'll see, hopefully, if they can continue the undefeated season at Bellarmine on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think they have Calumet College of St. Joseph again, and they took them to overtime in their first. Right. They got that win, but that was an overtime game, so could probably be a good matchup to catch as well again.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what happens. They're big one in the Big Ten, Nicole. Maryland and IU. A lot of people saying take the over. It's high, 65.5. People expecting a lot of points over in Bloomington.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a good atmosphere. It's supposed to be a beautiful day, so you're always happy to have that for a nice Bloomington tailgate. But I think also all eyes are going to be on IU and the offensive line with Darren Hiller out, Rod Carey in. He said in his press conference right after he took over that it's not going to be a wave of the magic wand. It's not going to solve everything, but I think Tom Allen has faith in him, and I think that you're going to see some different stuff this week, and hopefully it pays off for the Hoosiers. Maryland certainly not a competitor that you want to just you don't want to overthink it, and you don't want to overlook them. And so I think that'll be interesting, but it'll be a beautiful day in Bloomington regardless. So that'll be fun.
IU never loses a tailgate.
Nope.
Omar Purdue has back-to-back Big Ten wins. They're winning at Minnesota and at Maryland. Purdue back against a Nebraska team that is certainly underwhelmed. They have a new interim coach, but you never want to overlook Nebraska, the Big Ten, if you're the Boilers. Yeah,
Indiana have to maybe watch some Purdue film this week since they had that 2-point win over Maryland. But you mentioned Purdue has kind of really rallied well, I think, since that game-time decision with Aiden O'Connell starting at Minnesota, and they get that win, and then they go to Maryland and continue with there. Nebraska now, though, since they made the coaching change, Scott Frost out, kind of interested to see where they are. What are they going to do long-term? They're going to give their current interim coach a shot, and growing up, it's funny because they were one of those brand name programs, and it's kind of like, even though I'm not a fan, it kind of hurts a little bit when you see a program like Nebraska fall as far as they have. But they seem to be playing better the past couple of games. Got the win over Rutgers last week, so it'll kind of be interesting in West Lafayette on Saturday. See if the Boilers can continue their hot streak.
Any other final thoughts as we close out our Going to the End Zone podcast for this week?
Just excited for these games.
Yes.
Every week there's a bunch of good games. I love it.
And like Nicole mentioned, I think decent weather this weekend.
Yes, it's going to be pretty.
Should be great weather. Thanks for watching this week's Going to the End Zone podcast. See you next time. We'll probably see you around a football game this weekend.